is the communist mentality. That is the society of communism, is the government basically tells you where you're going to go, even as far as where you bought your groceries based on where you lived and what groceries you were allowed to buy. That is the model of our current public education system. I mean, I'm probably going to offend some people here, but that is a communistic model. Now, the problem that we run into, especially with local school boards, and again, this is painted with a very large brush, is when we start talking about local control, we hear a lot about local control from school boards, that the state shouldn't have any say-so, shouldn't have any input in the way that the local school systems run because they want their own autonomy, but they never have a problem with taking the state taxpayer dollars coming down. So I've made the offer before, is if you totally want total control, total autonomy, without any input from the state, then don't take any state tax dollars. Raise all the money for the school system locally. When we talk about the homeschool issue, homeschool parents, as well as private school parents, pay tax dollars, pay their local public school tax dollars, but they receive no state benefit for those tax dollars. And you don't hear a large outcry from that. There's many that would like to, you know, at least give us the benefit or a tax break, because we are not a burden upon the local school system. We're taking on the education of our children ourselves. So the truth of the matter in the state of Georgia, the local governments are an extension of state government. And in the entire state, every local government does, to an extent, fall under the authority of the state in some shape, form, or fashion.
I want to tag on to that too and say, think about this. These cyber schools that are kind of the wave of the future, and they're not going to be for every kid, but say you're a kid in South Georgia and you can't get a physics class, you know, and you can get it on cyber school, but your school district won't approve that charter school. Can you imagine? There's 180 school systems in Georgia. Any statewide charter would have to be approved by 180 different localities. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just not going to work, and it's really not right for the kids that have that need. In the end, I think that the local school systems should see this as a boon and a bonus for them, that they can not have to hire a teacher for some obscure subject. Maybe it's Chinese, maybe it's, you know, a language that they need to learn, but there's only 5 or 10 or 15 kids that want to take that. Well, that kid could take the course and they could do it sitting at their public school using the cyber school, whether it's the Georgia cyber school or a charter school, and it just makes sense for everybody. It saves money, and it just makes a whole lot of sense. So anyway, I just want, oh, and the other thing was homeschool. If you homeschool, are you going to now have to be approved by every county? If they have exclusive authority over education, are they now going to decide whether or not you can homeschool? That's been decided by state law before. I'm a homeschool parent as well, and that matters to me. I'm not homeschooling anymore. My kids are grown, but I don't really want. If I moved, and I did move right in the middle of our homeschooling, I didn't want to have to go to a new county and them decide if I could continue to homeschool my kids.
Mike Morton, you had a question over here.
Yeah, the basic model for homeschool and the fundamental of it is that the money follows the child. How do you make that happen without doing damage to the sending school, or in most cases, of course, the public school? 20 kids go to another school, and that's many, many, many thousands of dollars that public school loses. Explain that and
draining the pond, so to speak.
Mike, thanks for the question. And part of the answer is, if 20 kids have left the school, why does the school need the money for those 20 kids? That's to me, it seems like a very simple question and answer, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, but that's really, the argument is that public schools or public school representatives are fearful that the schools, the traditional zip code schools, are going to lose funding because if the money follows the child, just as you said, when the child's not in the school doesn't get the money. But that's exactly right. If I lose a client because they go hire another lawyer that they like better, they don't keep sending me a check. The money follows the client. So I've got to do a good job to keep that client in my office, or I go out of business. Now, the question I would pose to anybody who is concerned about that question, about this whole issue is, and I know there are divergent interests, divergent groups here represented tonight, but the first question is, why are charter schools in particular perceived as such a threat to the traditional zip code schools? What is it that those who are opposed to it are fearful of? It seems to be that there's a concern, as you've expressed, that children will flee the traditional school, the zip code school, and leave for what is perceived as a better product. So the question then is, why is it a better product? Do the charter schools have more money than the traditional zip code schools? No. Do they have better teachers? No. Do they have better administration, better staff, better facilities? No, no, no. You ask a teacher that question, and 9 times out of the 10 that I've asked the teachers, they're going to say, well, it's because of all of the government regulation that bears down on us in the classroom and tells us what we have to teach. Well, as I see it, charter schools are a great entree into exposing the flaws of those regulations by comparing less regulated education results, charter schools, to more regulated education results, zip code schools. And let's see which one works better. And I think the teachers are right. I think less regulated classroom education is going to be better for students than more regulated education. Well, apparently, they don't want to hear what I have to say.
Microphone guys are...
I'll tag on what Representative Cooper said, but the point of the money going to the school was to bear the cost of educating the child. If the child is no longer at the school, then why does the funding need to be there? That's the question. If the money is there to bear the cost of educating the child and the child isn't there anymore, yeah, the money's going to follow the child where they go. The problem we run into when it comes to this issue is if we talk about school choice, we talk about charter schools, we talk about private schools, we talk about home schools, all of a sudden we're deemed as anti-public school. And that is not the case. We're saying it's about education. What is best for the child, chosen by the parent. And the parents are bearing the cost. In basic economics, we are the lowest common denominator. We fund everything in this government. It comes down to us, not businesses, not corporations. It's the individuals that bear all the costs. All the costs of the public schools are borne by those of us that are sitting in this room that own property, that are paying taxes to the state and the federal government. He was exactly right. It's the overregulation. And I equate this back. When we were campaigning a couple of years ago, education was the big issue. What are we going to do to improve education in this state? I say, well, it's quite simple. As a history buff and someone who teaches a lot of American history, so let's just go back and see when our education system worked in this nation. If you go back to the 1930s and 40s, that was the education system that produced the scientists that put man on the moon. They produced the engineers, the astronauts, the scientists that did what people thought were impossible. What did we do then versus what we're doing now? What we did then was empower the teacher and allow them to teach. They weren't overburdened with all this regulation. They were given the ability to use their education, their resources, their